Hello, and today we're in Doncaster and we're visiting, if you haven't recognised the place behind, the Danum Museum. Now, the reason behind me being here, this isn't the Danum Museum, this is Hall Leys Academy, or formerly Doncaster Grammar School, which was founded in the 1500s. But the reason for me being here is that this was the home of a collection from the 1930s onwards. Nearly 10,000 exhibits, it's reckoned, were here off this small railway group. And all those exhibits were up there in that rather large clock tower you can see there, which is a newish build. But Hall Leys have kind of let me come in to have a look at where the collection was, and now we're going to go and see where it is, because it's moved now into the Danum Museum in the centre of the town in Doncaster. So you'll see some shots of where it was, and you'll see all the items that were on the wall. They're all labelled and carefully moved. Some are in storage, long-term storage now, just up the road. But the rest are on display in the Danum Museum, with quite a few signalling exhibits as well. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Now, the clock tower also held a water tank, which was meant to feed the school originally, but there was insufficient water pressure, so that left an empty space that was eventually filled by an old gauge layout, and was used for railway talks, and that led on to the club, which formed between 1930 and 1970, collecting all these bits of railway ephemera, which we'll now have a look at thanks to our colleague Jamie. So this is the collection as it was at the time. That's Queen Victoria's toilet you mentioned. And then that wall there will be the big wall over to my left in a minute. So obviously everything's been marked up and labelled up. You see all the numbers on the walls where everything was, so it's all identified when it goes into collection. And those are 3 locomotive nameplates that we'll see later in the museum. And there's rooms, little rooms after rooms, with everything stored in as well. So this is the new Danum Museum, built in the centre of Doncaster, which houses an art gallery and a museum, a collection of the railway arna, as well as other things from the local area. It's formed around an old girls' school, which is integral to the central part of the building itself. So let's have a look around. We start with the lamp wall I mentioned. You've probably seen that a few seconds ago in the video. So we head down into the basement now of the museum, which is the railway floor, and we'll have a look around the railway collection there, which holds a lot of signalling ephemera as well as all these nameplates and signal box name boards on the wall. Quite a few of the cabinets hold these model locomotives made by local engineers and some who actually worked at Doncaster Works. This engine up here, by the way, says LENR on its tender. Maybe that's a joke. It should be LNER. All around the museum are these touchscreen units, which are actually very good, and it documents some of the items that are in the cabinet so you can get more information and details on them. It's quite thorough and the whole collection has been itemised. This is very, very good. Every single one of them worked. I didn't have a problem with any of them. And as I went around the museum, these are on all the floors. So they're in the art gallery floor. They're also on the top part of the museum, which deals with the history of Doncaster itself. And everything's documented and you get a good, deep, thorough read of what everything is. There's also 2 locomotives on display in the railway section. Green Arrow is on loan from the National Railway Museum. The other locomotive is an Atlantic class locomotive built at Doncaster Works itself for the Great Northern Railway, number 251. The design of class of locomotive was actually meant to be able to pull all the heavy passenger trains. So it's a local engine of the East Coast Main Line, and it was retired around about 1947. Apparently, it's the only one of its class to survive as well. It was restored around the 1950s, and that was to celebrate the centenary of the Doncaster Works itself. So that's the railway part of the museum, but there's also the upstairs floors. I mentioned there's a section of the museum that deals with the history of Doncaster, and that is fascinating. Definitely take your kids there. You can spend an hour in there easily. Also, there's an art gallery upstairs, which is also worth looking into. And there's a cafe as well downstairs. So it's worth looking around. There's little bits of railway history buried everywhere. There's even this shop you can walk into to show the kids what sweet shops used to be like. So it's all very well laid out, very interesting, and definitely worth a visit.